Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. We are a couple days past the outcome of the Super Bowl, and as we all know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers became victorious in that one, and that all but just padded Tom Brady's legacy of 7 rings and I guess his fifth Super Bowl MVP. So our top three for this episode is going to be our top three athletes of all time.
Yeah, so obviously this is just going to be legacies. We're not going to maybe probably Bo Jackson's the best athlete ever.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking in terms like athleticism. We're talking legacies. So let's kick it off. Pat, who's your number three?
So my number three is Michael Jordan. 6 NBA titles. He's just year in and year out when he played, you could expect the Bulls to perform at the highest of levels with him. And I didn't get to watch him play personally, but watching those documentary and seeing everything that he did and just made people around him better it was just fantastic to watch. And I just took away from that documentary, like how his legacy has just like transformed the NBA into something else.
Yeah, I may or may not have Jordan further up on this list, so I'll leave my comments for later. But yeah, can't argue with that pick. My number three, another guy I didn't get to watch play, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So 6-time NBA champion, 3-time college champion with UCLA. They went 88-2 when he was at UCLA, which is crazy. He's captain of his Power Memorial High School basketball team that won 71 straight games in high school and 3 New York City Catholic championships. Kareem's just one of the best players ever. That meme photo of him at UCLA graduation with him like 5 feet over everyone else. Probably maybe one of the most unstoppable moves in sports history with the skyhook. Like I said, 6-time NBA, 3-time in college, 3 times in high school. It's 12 chips in his life, and I'm sure he won some grade school and middle school stuff too. So Kareem's my number three.
Yeah, so now we'll go to number two. Mine's Tiger Woods, and just like him so much, and just watching him play and just seeing how he changed the game of golf, and 15 major championships, over 80 PGA Tour wins. I mean, this guy just keeps doing it, and he's into his 40s. He has a master's into his 40s. He's just one of those guys where if he's on the leaderboard in on the weekend in a tournament, it doesn't matter if it's a major or not, people are going to turn it on to watch him. And that's one of those types of people that you have to take for granted. I mean, Brady's the same way, but he's just fantastic, at everything he does. And he's had the lows in his career, but he rebounded, and that's what great athletes and people that have these great legacies do. I mean, if we look at all of them, some of them have these rebounds that are just unbelievable from things that are just bad.
Yeah, and I feel like with Tiger, it's most people love him, but if you don't, you probably hate him. I don't think there's anywhere really in between. I'm on the love side. I love Tiger. Got my little guy right here. Like you said, 15 majors, 80 PGA Tour wins, all the back injuries, all the off links and dilemmas, but whatever. Tiger's back. He's always been back. That Masters run, what was it? 2 years ago now? 3 years ago?
Yep. 2 years ago.
Was just one of the best things I've ever watched. So yeah, I like the pick at number two. My number two is Jordan. You talked about him before. 6 for 6. Also won one at North Carolina. And he was, if you want to talk rebounds, I guess his father passing away, him taking a little break from basketball for baseball, a little 2-year stint with the White Sox, and then he just comes back and wins 3 more, 2 separate three-peats. He took everything personally. Obviously, The Last Dance is like the watch of quarantine if you're a sports fan. He almost won an MVP at like 40, which is crazy. Jordan's my number 2. I just think in terms of winning, he always gets it done.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about him. That documentary, it didn't say enough about just like the winning mentality that team had. I mean, like, as a Knicks fan watching that and realizing how close the Knicks actually were to beating this guy and then just not being able to, pull through with that, it was incredible to see. And like, imagine if the Knicks did win that, like what things that would have been changed about even, Jordan's legacy in a way and the Knicks franchise.
Yeah, and he never went to a game 7. He always finished it off early. And the bad boy Pistons really challenged him when he was early in his career, and the Pistons made him go to the gym basically, and he worked out and he wound up beating them. And obviously the famous Isaiah Thomas not shaking his hand, but he got he learned that he had to get stronger and he just did it, and then he won. So I mean, he was just the ultimate competitor. And I think we have the same number one. So just take it away. I guess I'll add something if you miss something, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, we made this topic pretty much for our number one pick, which is obviously going to be Tom Brady. I mean, what do you say about this guy now? 7-time Super Bowl champion. We said it in the last episode, and I think you harped on it, and I'm just going to harp on it again. Going to a championship in a sports league is in the highest of levels is as hard as it gets. Going 10 out of 20 times in your career is just truly remarkable. And watching that game on Sunday, I was just saying to myself, I'm like, we have this goat versus baby goat. I don't even think that conversation could be brought up anymore. Mahomes is a great talent, whatever, and I'm not taking anything away from the guy. Just what Brady brings to the table and how he expects everybody to perform at the highest level on his teams year in and year out is just remarkable. And he just goes about his business. So, I mean, I just don't know. We're lucky to see a guy perform like this in our lifetime, in my opinion. Like, we're just not going to see it. Like, we could say about like a Derrick Jeter of the world, like, you as a Yankee fan, you could say, oh, I'm never going to see a Derrick Jeter again. Yeah, you're probably not. We're definitely going to say the same thing about Tom Brady.
Yeah, he's just a psychotic competitor. I was watching Undisputed this morning, and there's a clip of him right before the kneel down there in victory formation, and all the Bucks, that haven't won a Super Bowl besides Gronk, are all like giddy and jumping up and down. He just screams, "Fucking focus!" Like everyone, they're up 22 points, like 7 seconds left, and he's yelling at them. I mean, he has 3 blunders. It's the Giants twice and the Eagles, and they aren't real like if Mahomes beat him, there could be a question. If Peyton Manning, if they ever met in a Super Bowl, which I know is impossible unless Peyton came back now. It's just there's never been a question of like Eli and Nick Foles. No one's like, oh, maybe they're better than Brady. When it matters most, he gets the job done. He's 7-3. I think if we did this list last year, there may be some questions about Brady. Can he do it without Belichick? And the first time he did, he leaves Belichick, he wins. And does that say anything about Belichick? Maybe, but I think it speaks more to Brady's greatness and legacy, and that he just gets the job done.
Yeah, and the whole thing is if you put talented people around him, the guy's going to perform at the highest level. He didn't last year. He didn't have those guys around him. You put him around him this year, and he just comes back better than ever. I mean, this is one of his better seasons in his career, stats wise. And his stats aren't going to blow you off the wall. Like he's got a lot of passing yards, a lot of touchdowns because he's been in the league a long time. But like we said, it's just the leader that he is and how he just goes about himself. And one thing else from that game, after the game, in the locker room, everybody's partying, smoking cigars, drinking. He's sitting there packing up at his locker, getting ready to go home, just like another day in the office for Tom.
Yeah, he's not done.
No.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 8 or 9 at this rate. And I don't think that's as easy as people think because he looks unstoppable right now. But it's insane that he's 43 years old and he's lost a step here or there, but he looks like the same old guy, the same old Tom. Another thing I want to mention about Jordan, we forgot to mention the Dream Team, gold medals. That's an awesome legacy. So yeah, that's our top 3. But if you want to do some honorable mentions, Bill Russell, 11-time champion, 2-time champion at San Francisco. Yogi Berra, 10 rings, 3 as a coach. Joe DiMaggio, 9-time World Series champion. Jack Nicklaus, Michael Phelps is another one.
Yeah,
I didn't want to put I didn't want to put a swimmer on there. No offense to the swimming crew, but I mean he has 30 medals, 28
something
golds.
like that.
Yeah,
it's
so
unbelievable.
So I mean you got to mention Phelps' name, but that's our top 3. Hopefully we're gonna have shit to talk about for our future top 3s because football is an easy one to go at, but I'm sure we will. It's officially March Madness season, officially NBA season. So speaking of March Madness, let's take a second jab at this mini bracketology. Our first one, I think like 5 of our teams lost that night.
Yeah,
which is a tough look. But we're gonna do 4 seeds this time because that's usually what you do. You do the top 4. So Pat, if you want to get started with your 4 seed list.
Yeah, so I have as my 4 seed list Tennessee, West Virginia, Virginia, and Oklahoma. I'm pretty sure we both have the same there. Picking and choosing from those 4 seeds. Virginia, you know what you're getting out of them: defense, defense, and more defense. I mean, watch them in a couple games; they actually could shoot the three, which is scary to think because Tony Bennett's squads usually aren't the greatest of shooters. And West Virginia, I mean, if you know what you're going to get out of them, which you never really do, but if I was to tell you that I knew what I was getting out of them, I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't be a Final Four contender. But they got the talent there. And Tennessee, I just you don't hear much about them, but they're 6-4 in their conference. They're just not. They're just one of those teams that you have a feeling we have them as a 4 seed now, but they're going to start to drop a little bit.
Yeah, so I have the same four: Tennessee, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Virginia. I think if you were to pick one of those teams to go to the Final Four, I think the safest pick is Virginia because, like you said, defense and that strives in the tournament. And they're not they shoot a lot of threes, but they don't live and die by the three. They're the most consistent team out of them, and I think they're the most well coached. I love Huggy Bear, but I think Tony Bennett keeps his team in check the best.
Mhm.
Um, Oklahoma, they had their run where they won like 5 ranked games in a row. They slowed down a little, but I still think they can do it. West Virginia, they're a very streaky shooting team. They had games earlier in the season. I think one against Richmond, they shot like 75%. And then they shoot like 38% from the field. So not great. And Tennessee, they beat Kansas the other day, which now doesn't look like a great win, but they don't really have any terrible losses. Ole Miss was tough, but losing to Alabama, losing to Missouri isn't the worst thing in the world. Florida by 30 is another bad look, but I, I don't love Tennessee, but it's hard to put them anywhere lower than a 4.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll go to 3 seeds. I got Alabama, Texas, Texas Tech, and Iowa. I mean, this is where we start getting into the mix between the 2 and 3 seed line, where you can easily debate who you have in each spot. I just Texas Tech and Iowa, in my opinion, are teams that you know what you're going to get out of them. I mean, the Iowa led team is a senior led team with talent across the board. It's just that Big Ten schedule is so tough. Like they could lose. Like we were looking at their schedule. I mean, some of the teams that you rattled off at the end of the year. I mean, they could easily lose half of those games, and next thing you know, we're looking at them as a 5 seed.
They have Wisconsin twice, Michigan once, Ohio State once, and then Penn State and those type of teams and Michigan State. I know they haven't had great years, but they're no like walk in the park.
Yeah, and Texas Tech, they have a big game coming up tonight
Yeah.
against
West
West
Virginia.
Virginia.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a telltale sign that I mean that's gonna kind of settle their places in the on the seed line. Uh, Alabama, they had a game against Missouri where they were getting absolutely blown out over the weekend, and they came back. You know, the 3 ball, which is their way to go. So I don't know how much I trust them because if they're not hitting their threes, they're gonna struggle. But I mean, and then Texas, they had that overtime. They lost to Oklahoma State over the weekend.
Yeah, in double overtime, and they didn't hit a single field goal all of overtime or double overtime. My 3 seeds, similar to you, I think we just have Houston and Bama switched. I have Houston, Iowa, Texas Tech, Texas. You can't not score in overtime or double overtime and expect to win a game. So, I mean, ability to score down the stretch, not there. Texas Tech, I love Texas Tech. I think Mac McClung is not just a dunker. He's actually a superstar. I love Texas Tech. Iowa, I think they're 1 seed good, but like you said, that Big Ten schedule, so like it's impossible to play. And we've said it before. They play. It's like cannibalism. They're all the same fucking team, and they just go at each other and beat each other consistently. So they've lost some games. They've dropped some games. That's why I have them as a 3 and not a 1 or a 2. But I love Iowa. There's no reason they can't go to the Final Four. And Houston, you can't lose to ECU. That's everyone likes you because you're a 1-loss team going into that game. You can't lose to ECU. That's just a bad look when everyone goes at you because you have a bad strength of schedule. If you beat them all, no one can really say anything. But if you lose to ECU pretty convincingly, I think it was like a 7-point loss, and they were down 9 most of the second half. That can't happen. So that's why I dropped them from a 2 to a 3.
Yeah, and just to go back to harping on the Big Ten schedule with Iowa, I mean, going into tournament time, there's going to be a couple teams. I don't know if it's going to be Ohio State, Michigan, and Iowa. I don't know. Like, or an Illinois, like if some of these teams start losing a couple games, like we could look at them being, a 5 or 6 seed down the road when it comes tournament time. Are you looking at them as like one of those teams where they had a really tough schedule? They could be a Final Four team even though they're a 6 seed, or are you like, this team? I just don't know how they're going to do outside of the Big Ten because they all play the same way.
Talking about Iowa.
Yeah, yeah,
So
Iowa specifically.
I
Yes.
think when you have the best player in the country, I think it changes things. And Garza, I think he's a lock to win the Wooden Award, and he's gonna win it. And I think he can bring them to the Final Four. I would lean, if you're gonna debate, like, are they more a 6 seed or are they more a Final Four team? Which one are they closer to? I would say they're closer to a Final Four team. They were at the beginning of the year, and they've had some bad losses, but I, besides like Northwestern and teams like that, I don't think there's a bad loss in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, and like look at a team that is like a 6 seed and projected, some projections right now, like Rutgers. They were nowhere to be found on on the brackets the last couple weeks. They rattle off a couple good wins. All of a sudden, they're a 6 seed. So you just look at this and you're like, the Big Ten is you're going to see teams shift just because of how hard the schedule is.
Rutgers was a top 15 team at the beginning of the season, then went out of the bracket. Now they're back in the top 25.
Yeah, so that tells you exactly what you need to know about the Big Ten and where they're getting seeded. So we'll go to the 2 seeds now, and my actually start off my 2 seeds. I got Illinois and Ohio State, both Big Ten teams, with Missouri and Houston. Uh, Out of those teams that I have there, any that you like or hate, and then you can do your top four.
Yeah, so I love Illinois. I think last year playing down the stretch, it was the freshman duo of
Mhm.
DeSumo and Coburn, and now it's a sophomore duo, and they're heating up down the stretch. They had a nice win against Iowa, I think like a week and a half ago, something like pretty recently. Houston, I don't love anymore. I used to be big on Houston, but losing that game sucks. Missouri was another one of your teams,
Yes.
so I have Missouri as well. They're a team like letting Alabama back into that game was tough.
Uh
That
huh.
can't happen. And they kind of were just frazzled when Alabama was shooting threes and making layups. Um, so yeah, my favorite team out of that is Illinois. My least favorite might be Houston. My personal two line is Illinois, Missouri, Villanova, and Alabama. Actually, wait, no. You said Ohio State, right, in the two?
Hmm.
Yeah, they're my favorite team. They're the hottest team in college basketball. I'll get into that because they're on my one line. I'll get into that after. My two line, Illinois, Missouri, Villanova, Alabama. Villanova lost to, now it looks like a streaky hot, like fiery hot Johnny's. The St. John's Red Storm all of a sudden can beat anyone. They beat Villanova, and their duo of Posh Alexander, that freshman guard, and then Champagny,
Yep.
they can score with anybody. But Villanova, they'll be all right. They'll be fine. Whenever Villanova's around here, it's either they're going to lose in the second round to like an 8 seed or something, or they're going to go to the Final Four and probably dominate everybody. But I personally, I don't know. I don't think their Final Four good, but it's hard to take away with their record. Missouri, I talked about, in Alabama. Them getting back in that game actually did a lot for me because I thought they were just going to sit down and lose by 30 because all they do is shoot threes. Some of their possessions are awful. They literally just come down and shoot a contested three. But I have mixed feelings about Alabama. My favorite on the two line is Illinois for me.
Yeah, I could agree with you. And Illinois beat Wisconsin over the weekend, and everybody was just raving about the way Illinois played and how they defeated Wisconsin. So they're definitely on the upward trend of teams, and they're another case of probably a tougher schedule. If they win those games, we could be looking at them as a 1 seed. So yeah, we'll go to the 1 seeds now. I believe there's 3 teams that we could pretty much lock in as of right now as 1 seeds, and then we could debate the final spot. Mine is Gonzaga, Baylor, Michigan. That would be in order, and then I have Villanova. I'm not gonna. That loss to St. John's was concerning. I'm not gonna take too much into it because they do have the talent. I just believe that Jay Wright knows what he has in this team, and they just ran into like you said, a streaky St. John's team that just absolutely destroyed them on the defensive side of the ball. So, do I think Villanova is a little bit shaky as a 1 seed? Yes, but as of right now, I take them over Ohio State.
Yeah, so like you said, Gonzaga Baylor is my 1 and 2. I don't think there's any questioning that. Um, my 3, I'd actually put Ohio State over Michigan, which I know would trigger a lot of Michigan fans of the rivalry. But I think Ohio State, the way they're playing, besides Gonzaga and Baylor, I don't think anyone in the country can beat them. They have a game against Michigan, February 21st, which should be a good one. EJ Liddell, he's a guard. He's awesome. They have this lefty shooter, and any lefty stroke gets me going. So I pause on that. That sounded weird, but I love a lefty shot. I think it's awesome, and he's money. Dwayne Washington's awesome. Their centers all rebound. I love this Ohio State team. I think they're national championship good. And then
Interesting.
Michigan hasn't played in forever, so I don't really know, but I don't want to take that away from them. So I'll keep them at a 1. That game, February 21st, is one to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Gonzaga the other night, they played a BYU team that, in as a conference game, I believe that that conference game was their they're probably their closest matchup they're going to have all year, and they beat them. I guess in a way, convincingly, they beat them by 11, not a Gonzaga type of win, but they still beat them. So I don't know if they're going to be stopped. But we were talking about between Gonzaga and Baylor. I mean, Baylor has the defense and they can hit three, which are two very important things in college basketball. Gonzaga, you said it before, they go on these runs where they get to pick and choose what they want to do, but if it's an off night, who knows?
Yeah, I just think Gonzaga, they have the most complete team. It's Suggs, Ayayi, Timmy, what's the other dude's name? Kispert.
Kispert, yep.
They just, I think they just have the most talent around the board, most complete players around the board. And then Baylor, they're the best defensive team in the country. It's very hard to score on them. Vital, Teague, Mitchell, Butler. That's another complete team. So I think it's Gonzaga, Baylor are up here, and then I think it's a little drop off to Ohio State. And I think it's the rest. I honestly think Ohio State's on a different level from the rest of the field, but they're nowhere near Baylor and Gonzaga.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that, in past years we have had, one seeds that are like one seed that's locked in. I believe this year the two in Gonzaga and Baylor, I mean, unless they falter down the stretch, they're locked in. And they're, I bet you we look, when Selection Sunday comes around and they are one seeds, let's say, I guarantee you a lot of people are just plugging and placing them in as Final Four teams, and they're just working the rest of the bracket.
Yeah. So me, I love March Madness. My favorite time of the year. Selection Sunday is March 14th. We have to wait an extra day for it to start because the first four is that Thursday, but it's coming and I'm excited. Let's stay with basketball. Our boy D Rose back in the Mecca. He's gonna wear number 4. Knicks traded. That's under my throat. Pat, you take this.
Yeah. So the Knicks traded Dennis Smith and a second rounder to the Pistons for Derrick Rose. This is a Tom Thibodeau special, in my opinion. I believe that he so wanted this. I think, I'm not going to look at the on-court stuff yet about, what to expect at the point guard position. But looking at it from the outside, I mean, Derrick Rose, he could be a good leader for like a guy like Emmanuel Quickly and help him out. Because I surely don't believe that Elfrid Payton's doing the job for Emmanuel Quickly, and Emmanuel Quickly is just going on his own and helping this team at the point guard position, which is probably one of the tougher positions in the NBA to play. But you look at the Knicks rotation now at point guard, you have 3 guys, and who, let's talk about the starter, who was Elfrid Payton, the backup was Quickly, and now you have Derrick Rose. How do you work out this rotation?
Yeah, so there we go. It's interesting. I don't love Peyton, but he can't deny he has been playing better of late. Tibbs loves his defense, so that's classic Tibbs. He's going to play in. But I hope this doesn't take minutes away from Quickly. I hope Rose and Peyton can get an even mix. I think it's interesting if you want to look at the Thunder blueprint from last year when they had the 3-point guards, Schroeder, Shai, and Chris Paul. I think you could do something like that. Obviously, it's not the same level because I think all those point guards I just named are better than all the Knicks point guards. But I think if you can work something out where all 3 of them get minutes and Quickly can learn from a guy like D Rose, who he even said this morning that he's there to teach the young guys, and which is crazy to say for Derrick Rose, how much time flies. But if he could teach Quickly to be a great point guard, I'm all for it. It's interesting to see if they move Peyton. I wouldn't mind that, but I don't think they will. It's D Rose's 3rd stint with Tibbs, which is crazy. They were the Bulls, the T-Wolves, and now in the Knicks. I'm sure D Rose is happy about it because Detroit's just a shithole.
Yeah, for sure. And, like you said about Alfred Payton, he does start and everything, but down the stretch of games, usually he's not the one that's in. Usually it is quickly. So, I mean, do they start to limit Payton's play? Maybe, but Payton could be a good trade piece. I mean, he's performing at a level that, in his career that I mean, you could go back to the Magic. He did have a couple good seasons, but he is worthy of a trade. And who's to say the Knicks don't flip him for another player that, can produce at this time? Because, I mean, the Knicks are in the thick of things when it comes to like a 6, 7, or 8 seed in the East.
Yeah, I think this trade was a win for both sides. A second rounder is not much for the Knicks right now, and Dennis Smith, he was in the G League, and I think that the Pistons have the timeline to just take a chance on a 22-year-old point guard who, coming out of college, was a top 10 pick. Knicks passed on him. Coming out of high school, he's like the number one recruit. So I mean, it sucks to see what happens to Dennis Smith Jr.'s career, but I mean, he's got a fresh start in Detroit. But I wouldn't be opposed to trading Alfred Payton, like you said. I just don't see who would take on Alfred Payton. Maybe a contender that needs a point guard or a backup point guard. I think that's always a good idea. Maybe throw him in for a Beal trade. Who knows? Who knows? That's wishful thinking. But I'm glad to see D Rose back with the Knicks. He averaged 14 a game so far with Detroit, and who doesn't like D Rose?
Exactly. And, some nights you look at Derrick Rose and, even as he's getting older, he is dominant at the point guard position at times. And it's fun to watch. And I remember going back a couple years ago when he did get traded to the Knicks, and we were all going crazy. We were like, "This is the team, this is the year," and things did not go the right way for the Knicks that season. But we did have a time where Derrick Rose was in. I mean, how good do you think he was? Insane.
I mean, he had a chance to be one of the best point guards of all time, and injuries derailed his career. Maybe that's Tibbs' fault. Who knows? He always had an injury history. But I mean, the narrative that he's an old fart. He's younger than Steph Curry
Yeah.
by like 7 months. So there's no reason to be like, oh, he's washed up. He's averaging 14 a game. He's 32. He's not 36. It's like he'll be all right. And
Yeah.
I'm glad the Knicks went and got him. So let's get into the big story. This weekend, I say this with a frown on my face, the Bucks beat the Chiefs in a blowout, 31-9. I bet on the Chiefs. You bet on the Chiefs. Honestly, this may sound like a lie. I'm more mad that the game just sucked. It was just so boring.
Yeah, it was not a fun watch, to be honest with you. I'm not gonna lie, there was never really at any point besides obviously the beginning of the game when it was close that I was like the Chiefs actually have a chance of coming back in this because it it could go from a stupid mistake on defense to a stupid penalty being called to a horrific offensive line performance. It was just all these factors thrown into one thing, and the Chiefs stood no chance of getting back into this game. And I credit the Bucks. Regardless of we could talk about the referees and the flags and everything. The Bucks game plans on offense and defense was fantastic.
Yeah, I think Brady played great, but I think if you could give a Super Bowl MVP to a coach, I think Todd Bowles should have got it. I think
100%.
he had the perfect game plan, get to Mahomes, and basically play prevent defense, doubling Tyreek, doubling Kelsey, just putting safeties all the way at like the end zone, basically playing them so far back, making him escape the pocket. Mahomes broke a Super Bowl record for scramble yards. The Bucks broke a Super Bowl record for pressures. Mahomes scrambled for 500 yards. I mean,
Yeah.
that's nuts.
And the pressures, I was looking at 27 of 56 dropbacks from Mahomes. He was pressured on. That's 48%.
Yeah,
So
basically half.
half of the game, he stepped back to throw the ball. He was getting pressured. I'm sorry, we talked about it before the game, and I said it. Mahomes is that type of quarterback that can, get elude the pressure and get away with it. And that's what I honestly thought it was going to happen. That the Bucks were going to just pressure him so much that he was going to elude it and find a way to get out of it. That was not the case.
And
And
I'm not trying to defend the tackles, but I think one of the main reasons it's not that they're terrible offensive tackles because Remmers is a good tackle.
yeah,
It's the lack of preparation, and you only have a week to prepare to start in the Super Bowl. It's kind of crazy. So I think we thought that it was making way too big of a deal, but this just proves that offensive line and especially your blind spot, the left tackle, is it's the most important position in football.
Yep.
And if you don't have a good O line, you're fucked. Mahomes made some of the most incredible incompletions ever.
Yeah.
He had one where he's literally horizontal to the ground. He had that one where he threw to Pringle at the pylon. Um, I felt bad for Mahomes. I think his receivers let him down. Tyreek definitely let him down. A couple big drops. Darrell Williams had that drop. Hardman wasn't great. He looked like he wasn't involved at all. Kelsey played well, but he had a big drop on that third down play in the first quarter, or first or second quarter. It was early, but
Yep.
it was a pivotal third down. So yeah, I don't think you can blame Mahomes for this. I think you can blame Spagnuolo. Spags had a terrible game plan, and the Chiefs' defensive players didn't play well either. I think the referees were a little too involved. I'm not saying they were terrible calls, but if you look back at the NFC Championship, they let it ride. And then you go to the Super Bowl, they're all over everyone. By everyone, I mean specifically the Chiefs. So yeah, but you can't discredit the Bucks. They played awesome. It's a 22-point game. You cannot blame on the refs. If it was closer, maybe you can get a call here and there. You think it's BS, but it's a 22-point game. It was a blowout. I thought a funny stat was every player who scored for the Bucks was not on the team last year. So Brady, Gronk, AB, Fournette, even Ryan Suckup, the kicker, wasn't there last year. So that's the definition of buying a Super Bowl. I thought Devin White should have won MVP. Personally,
Yep.
Brady threw for 200 yards, 201. He wasn't incredible, but he did what he had to do. And it felt like they could score whenever they wanted to.
Yeah. And to go along with Devin White, we were talking about him a ton going into the playoffs about how good he was. And I don't, in my opinion, I don't think many people saw how good he was. Like they knew about his name because he was a top, top 6 pick. So they knew about, his name and everything. But I mean, this guy is a stud. And they have two linebackers in David and White that are just complete animals. And they're insanely good. So, I mean, the Bucks they have the personnel. And if they're going to, if they're going to run with the same group next year, they're only going to get better. I mean,
Yeah, they
have to
gotta
get a year under the belt.
re-sign Godwin. They gotta re-sign Shaq Barrett. Another thing I wanted to mention, two things actually. Godwin and Mike Evans were non-factors the
Yeah.
entire game. They had 3 catches collectively under 100 yards. I think 40 yards total. Gronk was the main story. Brady the Gronk in the playoffs. That was so obvious. What did I want to say? Oh, JPP. He's never lost a playoff game.
Really?
He's 8-0 and play. He had the one Super Bowl run with the Giants.
Yeah.
And then this one with the Bucks. He's never been to the playoffs besides that. So little tidbit. JPP is one of the best defensive playoff players ever.
Yeah.
I don't know how old he is, but all of a sudden he resurrected his career. He's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL.
Yeah, he sure is. And I mean, some of the players that the Bucks have that, the Fournettes, Antonio Brown, JPP, these guys that just in the Dominican Sue, like all this season is like, my God, they got a ring on them now, and their legacies have just gotten even better. Like Leonard Fournette, man, I mean, playoff Lenny, they call him. The way he ran in that Super Bowl, I mean, he's been doing it all playoffs, don't get me wrong, but the way he ran in that Super Bowl, he was trucking over people.
He looked like
wasn't
he was at
there.
LSU.
Yeah, he did.
At LSU. He looked like, that rookie year Fournette. They were all awesome. I mean, if you think about that Bucks pass rush, if you want to count David and White in there, sure, but you got Barrett, JPP, Vita Vea, Sue. Vita Vea, did he even he was basically a non-factor, but I guess he wasn't because they had so many pressures at all times. We talked about Brady in our top 3, but I mean, I think Mahomes has to win 9 now to top him.
Yeah.
No, that's not an exaggeration. Because I don't think he'll have the chance to beat him again. I mean, that's not to say that the Chiefs won't be back there in the next 2 years and Brady can't be either. But it's a slim chance. And I think if he wins one more than Brady, I think everyone's like, all right, well, Brady has the other one. So I think he's got to get to 9.
Yeah. I have a question because, obviously the Bucks dominated on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Is this a different outcome if the Chiefs have their 2 starting left tackles, or do you just think the Bucks just dominated?
I think it's definitely a different outcome.
Okay.
So I think Mahomes has more time to make those plays. He was this close no, this is a podcast. Like I pinched my fingers down, very, very close to what could have, been touchdowns and balls hit off guys' faces. If he has more time to perfectly place those balls, I think it's a totally different game. And, I don't know how much his toe was affecting him, but he was running all over the place. So he seemed fine, but I do think it's a different game. And I think the Chiefs can win. I think it's that important.
Yeah. And, we talked about it, but penalties, 11 penalties for 120 yards. I'm sorry. You could be the best team in the world. You may win a game, but it'll end up having to be close because that just can't happen. And these penalties weren't on stupid 1st and 10s. They were on third and 10s, fourth and 1s, field goals. Like, what were they doing?
Like, another thing I want to mention, you can, get pissed all you want about a holding call here and there. The ball gets thrown in the back of the end zone. You can't go offsides on a field goal. You can't get an unsportsmanlike conduct. That's another, drive continuer for Brady. And if that happens for Brady, it's game over. You can't give him a second chance, especially in the Super Bowl. And the Chiefs' neutral zone infractions are, just starting in the neutral zone has haunted them, especially against Brady. And now they know twice that you can't make those mistakes against Brady. That's all we got for today. Goodbye, football. That sucks. But it's officially basketball, hockey season, pitchers and catchers in 2 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there'll be no shortage of content. You can find us on Instagram at afterthewhistle.pod, on Twitter, AT_whistle, After the Whistle on YouTube, afterthewhistlesports.com, whole bunch of shit. That is going to do it. We'll see you guys on Saturday. I'm Tanner.
And I'm Patrick.
Thanks, guys.